Mr. Jenson, the nanny just quit. Parker Jenson dropped his pen mid-signature. What do you mean she quit? Greta's birthday party is tomorrow. There are ponies. A petting zoo. That woman cannot just— She's on a flight to Bali, his assistant said, holding up her phone. She sent a 2-line resignation, said she's spiritually burnt out. Parker ran a hand down his face and stood from behind his massive glass desk. The floor-to-ceiling windows behind him framed the Manhattan skyline like a painting. Get me someone. Anyone. I don't care if she's from a Craigslist ad, just get someone here by tonight. I already called an agency. They're sending someone within the hour. Her name is Willow. Willow Adams clutched her canvas tote and tried not to look overwhelmed as the doorman led her through the marble lobby of the Central Park West penthouse. She'd answered the agency's call out of desperation. Her rent was overdue. Her tiny apartment smelled like her neighbor's cat. And she'd just ended a 3-year relationship with a guy who thought emotional availability was a type of coffee. So when the agency offered her a last-minute weekend nannying job for 10 times her usual rate, she didn't ask questions. But she hadn't expected to walk into a palace. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse. A sleek, open space with white and gold accents, high ceilings, and a view that made her knees wobble. A little girl in a unicorn onesie stood at the far end of the room, arms crossed, scowling at a woman in a headset. I said I don't want a magician. I want a baby elephant. Willow blinked. Hi, she said cautiously. I'm Willow, the new nanny. The girl turned. You're not wearing scrubs, do I need to? Willow asked. No, said a deep voice behind her. She just likes to test people. Willow turned and nearly dropped her tote. The man who walked toward her wore a navy suit that probably cost more than her car had when it was new. He had sharp cheekbones, dark hair swept back, and a presence that made the air feel thicker. His eyes, icy blue and unreadable, took her in with one quick sweep. I'm Parker Jenson, he said, extending a hand. That's Greta. She's 6. She likes dinosaurs, birthday parties, and emotional manipulation. Greta narrowed her eyes. You didn't tell her about the baby elephant. He crouched beside his daughter. We talked about this. Elephants don't live in penthouses. But you're rich. Willow bit her lip to keep from laughing. Parker stood and looked at her again. You're with Bright Care? Yeah, Willow said quickly. They said you needed someone last minute. I do. My schedule's packed this weekend. I'll be in and out. Greta's party is tomorrow. There'll be staff helping, but she needs someone she actually listens to. Greta crossed her arms again. I don't listen to anyone. Willow crouched to her level. I'm not anyone. Greta blinked, then tilted her head. Do you know how to braid hair? Better than a unicorn stylist. Greta paused. Fine, you can stay. Parker raised an eyebrow. That's the fastest approval I've seen. Willow stood. Kids usually like me. Probably because I don't talk down to them. He studied her for a beat longer, then nodded. You'll be staying in the guest suite down the hall. Full access to the kitchen, staff, whatever you need. Greta's bedtime is 8. She'll try to push it. I never sleep before 10, Greta shouted from down the hallway. Parker didn't even flinch. She's lying. Willow smiled despite herself. Got it. He looked at his watch. I have a dinner meeting. I'll be back late. Thank you for stepping in. She nodded. No problem. As he walked away, Greta tugged on Willow's hand. Do you know he's a millionaire? Is that so? He owns buildings, like tall ones with elevators. Willow looked toward the hallway Parker had disappeared into. That explains the view. By bedtime, Greta was in love. With Willow's bedtime stories, her ability to draw velociraptors from memory, and her refusal to let Greta eat frosting straight out of the tub. You're the best nanny ever, she mumbled as she fell asleep in a pile of stuffed animals. Willow closed Greta's bedroom door gently, then tiptoed into the kitchen. She poured herself a glass of water and sat at the island, looking out at the glittering skyline. The place was beautiful, but it felt empty, too clean, too cold. Can't sleep, she jumped. Parker stood near the hallway, jacket off, tie loosened. He looked less intimidating now, but no less sharp. Didn't hear you come in, she said. He walked to the fridge and pulled out a bottle of sparkling water. Greta, she's out cold. But I get the sense she's not always easy. You'd be right, he said, leaning against the counter. She's been through a lot. Her mom left when she was 4, no contact since. Willow's heart tugged. I'm sorry, he shrugged. I'm not. Greta's better off, but it's made it hard. She doesn't trust easily, Willow nodded slowly. Well, she likes me, at least for now. She likes you a lot. He looked at her again, this time less guarded. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone older, more, buttoned up, she grinned. Sorry to disappoint. You didn't. His voice dropped just slightly, the air shifted, just a little. Willow looked away first. Well, I should get to sleep, big day tomorrow, baby elephants and all, Parker chuckled. No elephants, she walked past him, brushing his arm gently. We'll see. The next morning, Willow woke to the sound of squeals and clapping. Greta's birthday party was a full-blown fairy tale. There were ponies with glittered manes, a magician, a bounce castle somehow built into the terrace, and a dessert table that looked like it had been flown in from Paris. Parker moved through it all in a charcoal suit, speaking with guests and clients, always keeping Greta in his line of sight. Willow watched him from beside the cake table. He wasn't just wealthy, he was respected. Everyone moved when he spoke. But every few minutes his eyes would flick to Greta, and once to her. She didn't know what that look meant, but it made her stomach flutter. Later, when the guests were gone and the staff was cleaning up, Parker found her on the balcony. She was barefoot, sipping lemonade, her hair loose from the braid Greta had insisted on. That was impressive, she said. The party, I had help. You're not as cold as you pretend to be, he looked at her. You're not as temporary as I expected, she blinked. What? I was going to hire you for 2 days, now I'm not so sure, her heart skipped. You're not just saying that because Greta's obsessed with me, he stepped closer. That's part of it, but not all, she waited. I haven't had someone in this house who laughs, who makes the air feel lighter, he paused. Not since Greta's mom left, Willow swallowed. I'm not looking for anything complicated. Neither am I, he said, but you walked in here and I haven't stopped thinking about you since. She looked up at him, the city lights casting a glow around them. I'm not like the people in your world, she said softly. Good, he said. Because the people in my world don't make me feel anything. And before she could think, before she could talk herself out of it, he leaned in and kissed her, soft, warm, and full of something that felt dangerously like more. Willow didn't sleep that night. Not because of Greta who, after a sugar crash and a bubble bath, had drifted off mid-sentence, but because of the kiss. Warm and unexpected, lingering on her lips long after Parker had stepped back and told her good night like nothing seismic had just happened. She lay awake in the guest suite, staring at the ceiling, her pulse still an unsteady rhythm. She wasn't the type to romanticize things. She knew better than to confuse chemistry with commitment, but there'd been something in his eyes, haunted and hungry all at once, that made her chest tighten. She told herself it didn't matter. This was temporary. She'd be gone by Monday. Still, the next morning she lingered a little longer, brushing her hair, just in case. She found Parker in the kitchen, not in a suit this time, but in a faded Henley and dark jeans, barefoot, standing in front of the espresso machine like he'd done it 1,000 times. He glanced over his shoulder when she entered. Coffee, please, she said, leaning against the island to watch him. He slid a steaming mug toward her, then leaned against the counter across from her, arms crossed. The silence stretched. About last night, she said. He didn't flinch. You regret it, she wrapped her hands around the mug. I don't know, do you? No. He said it without hesitation. Willow looked down into her coffee. I'm not built for casual, I've done that before. It leaves me feeling like I'm borrowing someone else's life. I didn't kiss you because I was bored, Willow. His voice was lower now, more deliberate. I kissed you because you walked into my world and rearranged everything without even trying. She looked up, caught off guard. You don't even know me. Then let me. Before she could answer, Greta padded into the room, dragging a blanket. I had a dream you were a mermaid, she said sleepily to Willow. Willow smiled and held out her arms. Greta climbed into her lap without hesitation. Parker watched them, something unreadable in his expression. "I'm supposed to be at a construction site in Brooklyn this morning," he said after a moment, "but I want to take you both somewhere first." Willow raised an eyebrow. "Where?" He didn't answer, just disappeared down the hall. An hour later, they were in the back of a black SUV, weaving through the city. Parker didn't explain, just sat beside Willow with Greta between them, pointing out buildings as they passed. "This one's mine," he said as they slowed in front of a sleek glass high-rise. "The top 10 floors." Greta looked up in awe. "That's taller than the Statue of Liberty." Willow turned to him. "You're showing off." "I am," he said easily. "You said I didn't know you." "I figured I'd start by letting you know me." The car pulled into a private garage, and they stepped out into an elevator that required a fingerprint scan. Willow kept her face neutral, but inside she was reeling. The elevator opened into a penthouse that was all steel and stone, sleek, modern, masculine. But cold. There were no toys, no photos, no softness. "This was my first big acquisition," he said, watching her take it in. "I bought it straight out of grad school, lived here alone for years. Made my first 10 million in this building." Willow turned slowly. "And yet it feels like no one lives here." "I haven't been back in months." She nodded, then glanced at Greta, who was peering curiously at a glass sculpture near the window. "I thought maybe I'd show you where I came from," he said. "Before Greta, before everything changed." Willow crossed to the floor-to-ceiling windows. "From here, the city looked like a miniature model." "Why?" "Because I want you to understand I didn't always have her, or this life. I built it. And now, I'm trying to figure out what kind of man I want to be in it." She turned. He was watching her like she was a riddle he'd spent years trying to solve. "I don't need to be impressed, Parker," she said gently. "I just need to know you're not going to kiss me one night and vanish the next." "I won't vanish," he said, "but I'm not perfect. I'm used to walls. I've lived behind them for years." "Then maybe it's time you opened a few doors." His mouth lifted slightly. Starting with this one, they left the penthouse a few minutes later. Parker stopped by the front desk to greet the building manager, who looked startled to see him. Greta tugged at Willow's hand. "Can we get pancakes?" Willow glanced at Parker. "There's a place on 5th, he said. "Best pancakes in the city." They took a detour, ending up in a sunlit cafe with mismatched chairs and a chalkboard menu. No one recognized Parker here. He looked different in the soft morning light, more approachable, less like a man who signed billion-dollar deals before breakfast. Greta devoured a stack of blueberry pancakes while Willow and Parker shared a plate of lemon ricotta ones. Conversation was easy, light, even playful. They talked about travel, favorite books, childhood memories. Willow found herself laughing more than she had in weeks. After breakfast, they walked through Central Park. Greta ran ahead, chasing pigeons, while Parker and Willow strolled behind. "My father was military," he said. "Never home. When he wanted silence, structure. I learned early how to be invisible." Willow looked up at him. "And now I want to be seen, but I don't always know how." She reached for his hand. He let her take it. They walked in silence for a moment, the kind that said more than words. Then Greta came running back, waving a leaf like a trophy. "Look. It's shaped like a heart." Willow crouched and took it carefully. "You're right, it is." Greta handed it to her, then darted off again. Parker watched her go, then turned to Willow. "I want to keep seeing you," he said. "Not just for Greta, for me." "Okay," she said quietly. "But no more castles in the clouds. If this is going to be something, it has to be real." He nodded, his hand tightening around hers. "Real," he said. "I can do that." But he didn't know then what was coming or how quickly things could unravel. Willow's phone buzzed on the marble kitchen island, the screen flashing with her roommate's name. She silenced it without answering. "You can take that," Parker said, entering from the hall, fastening the cuff on one sleeve. "I don't bite." Willow glanced toward the guest suite where Greta was still asleep, then back to him. "It's fine. She just wants to know when I'm coming back." He paused, adjusting his watch. "Do you know?" She hesitated. "I was supposed to leave yesterday, I know. But I haven't felt like I needed to." He came closer, stopping across from her at the island. Stay at least until Friday. That's 5 more days, exactly, she raised an eyebrow. You always get what you want. He didn't smile, but there was a warmth in his eyes now that hadn't been there before. Not always, but I ask when I mean it. Willow picked up her coffee, hiding the way her pulse jumped. You're lucky Greta didn't fire me herself. She tried. Twice. But I told her you're non-negotiable. Just then, Greta's bedroom door creaked open, revealing a nest of tangled hair and sleepy eyes. Do we have school today? Nope, Parker answered, but we are going somewhere. Greta blinked. Where? You'll see. Willow tilted her head. Should I be worried? Maybe. Dress comfortably. 2 hours later, they stood in front of a narrow red brick building tucked between a florist and an Italian bakery in Brooklyn. The sign overhead read, Crescent Arts Collective. Greta looked up at it. What's a collective? Parker opened the door. Let's find out. Inside, the space was a riot of color canvases stacked against walls, clay sculptures on pedestals, half-finished murals stretching across the ceiling. A woman with paint on her cheek called Parker by name and waved them through. I sponsor their kids program, he explained to Willow as they followed the woman. Figured it was time Greta saw something she couldn't buy. Greta tugged Willow's hand. Can we paint? Willow knelt beside her. Only if you promise not to paint me green. I promise nothing. They spent the next 2 hours painting, sculpting, and laughing. Greta made a clay dinosaur with 3 heads. Willow painted a skyline with streaks of sunrise. Parker sat nearby, sketching something he didn't show anyone. When Greta ran off to join a group making collages, Willow brushed her hands clean and sat beside him. You're good at this, she said, nodding at his sketchpad. He closed it quietly. Used to be better, before things got busy. When was the last time you did something just because it made you happy? He looked at her for a long moment. I don't remember. She reached over and gently touched his wrist. Maybe you should start. They left just before sunset, arms full of drying art projects. Greta fell asleep in the car, her head on Willow's shoulder. Parker glanced at them from the front seat mirror. You two look like you've known each other forever, Willow whispered. Sometimes it feels like it. That night, after Greta was tucked in, Willow found Parker on the balcony, leaning against the glass railing with a tumbler of something amber in his hand. She's happy, he said without turning around. Willow joined him, arms folded against the chill. She should be. Today was good. He nodded, staring out at the blinking lights. I've been thinking about what you said earlier. About doing things that make me happy. And I don't know what those things are anymore. She looked at him sideways. Then maybe stop managing your life like a company acquisition. Try something reckless. He turned to her. Like you, her breath caught. Is that what you think I am? I think you walked into my life and nothing's been the same since. You say that like it's a bad thing. He stepped closer. It's not. It's terrifying, but it's not bad. She didn't move away. Then stop overthinking it. He took the invitation for what it was. His mouth found hers again, deeper this time, not tentative but certain. The kiss tasted of expensive whiskey and something rower, like relief. When he finally pulled back, he rested his forehead against hers. Tell me I'm not reading this wrong. You're not, she whispered. But I need to know this isn't just a distraction for you. His eyes searched hers. I don't do distractions. I do control, management, strategy, but with you, I don't want any of that. She took his hand. Then try not controlling it. Just feel it. They stood that way for a long time, the city humming beneath them, the air heavy with everything unsaid. The next morning, Willow woke to the smell of cinnamon and the sound of soft music playing down the hall. She padded into the kitchen to find Greta at the counter, Parker beside her, both wearing aprons. Willow blinked. Are you two making cinnamon rolls? I measured, Greta announced proudly. He stirred. Parker offered her a mug. You get to taste test. She took a bite and immediately groaned. Okay, this is officially dangerous, Greta beamed. We're opening a bakery. Daddy said we can call it Greta's Rolls. Parker leaned against the counter. I might be out of a job soon. Willow laughed, and the sound filled the room like sunlight. But later that afternoon, while Greta was at a playdate and Parker was in a meeting, Willow's phone rang again. This time, it wasn't her roommate, it was her sister. "Willow," came the voice, tight and urgent. "It's Mom, she's in the hospital." Willow's stomach dropped. "Is she?" "She's stable, but you need to come home." Willow pressed a hand to her forehead. "I'll be there tonight." She packed slowly, her fingers fumbling over zippers and folded shirts. When Parker returned, she was in the guest suite, suitcase open on the bed. He stopped in the doorway. "You're leaving?" She nodded without turning. "My mom's sick, I need to be there." "For how long?" "I don't know." He stepped closer. "You can take my jet." She finally turned to him. "That's not why I told you, I know, but I want to help, I know." He shoved his hands in his pockets. "I thought we were just getting started." "So did I." Greta appeared at the door then, holding a drawing. "Are you going?" Willow knelt. "Only for a little while." "Will you come back?" She glanced up at Parker, then back to Greta. "If I can." And with that, she left, no promises. No guarantees. Just the sound of a door closing behind her, and a silence that settled over the penthouse like fog. The first thing Willow noticed when she stepped off the jet 2 weeks later was the change in the air. Manhattan in late spring was warmer, softer, buzzing with that breathless anticipation before summer tipped the world into bloom. She held her bag tightly against her shoulder, her body humming with nerves. She hadn't told Parker she was coming back. She wasn't sure how he'd react, if he'd want her back at all. Her mother had stabilized quickly. A minor cardiac scare, followed by a blur of hospital visits and tense family dinners. By the end of the first week, her sister had taken over the care rotation, gently insisting that Willow return to the life she'd left behind. But Willow hadn't rushed. She'd needed time to think, to breathe, to decide whether what had happened with Parker was a detour or the beginning of something real. She didn't call. She didn't send a message. She needed to see him. Face to face. The doorman recognized her instantly and buzzed her up without a word. The elevator doors opened to the same penthouse, but the energy was different. Softer. The vase by the entry table was filled with fresh peonies. A ribbon-tied drawing of a 3-headed dinosaur sat propped next to it. She stepped inside just as Greta came racing around the corner in a tutu and socks, nearly colliding with her. "Willow?" Greta launched into her arms without hesitation. "You came back," she said fiercely, burying her face in Willow's hair. Willow hugged her tightly. "I told you I would if I could." Greta pulled back, eyes wide. "Daddy said you left because you had to, but he didn't smile for days." Before Willow could respond, footsteps approached. Parker appeared in the doorway, wearing a light button-up and dark slacks, his sleeves rolled, his expression unreadable. Greta looked between them, then held up a hand. "I'll be in my room with my dinosaurs. For at least 10 minutes. She disappeared down the hall with practiced dramatic flair. Willow set her bag down, heart pounding. "Hi. I thought you were gone for good," Parker said quietly. "I didn't know what I was coming back to." He stepped closer, his gaze steady. "Neither did I, but I hoped." She searched his face. "Greta looks good. She's been drawing you into every picture she makes. Half the stick figures around here wear ponytails and carry tote bags." Willow laughed softly, then caught herself. "I didn't mean to vanish like that. Everything happened so fast," he nodded. "You did what you had to." "I'm glad your mom's okay," she hesitated. "I should have called. I kept the guest room ready." Her breath hitched. "You did?" "I didn't want to admit it to anyone, not even Greta, but I knew if you came back, you'd need to know you still belonged here." Willow looked around the room. Something was different. The cold edges had softened. A child's painting framed on the wall. A new throw blanket draped over the couch. A pair of ballet flats tucked beside the door. Signs of life, signs of her. "I didn't come back to be a guest," she said. He stepped even closer. "Then don't be." She looked up at him, her voice quiet but firm. "I need to know you're not going to shut down the second things get complicated. I need more than charm and big gestures. I need truth. Partnership. Something real." Parker reached into his back pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. He handed it to her without speaking. She unfolded it. It was a drawing Greta's, clearly but with two tall stick figures holding hands, a little one between them, all three standing under a crooked rainbow. Above their heads in uneven crayon letters were the words, "Me and Daddy and Willow forever." Willow's throat tightened. "She drew that 3 days after you left," Parker said quietly. "I didn't ask her to. I didn't even know she still had the crayons." Willow looked up, eyes shining. "I've spent years building a world that kept me safe," he said. "I didn't realize how lonely that world was until you walked into it. You didn't just make Greta laugh again, you made me want something I stopped believing I could have." She stepped forward, closing the space between them. "Then take it, I'm not asking for perfect, I'm just asking for honest." He reached for her hands. "I want you here with us, not as a guest. Not as a visitor from another world, I want you to stay." Willow took a deep breath, her fingers tightening around his. "Then tell me it's not just about Greta, tell me it's me." He leaned in, voice barely above a whisper. "It's always been you." She kissed him. Not like before. This wasn't tentative or cautious. This was final, certain, the kind of kiss that settled things, that rewrote endings. When they pulled apart, Greta was standing in the hallway with her hands on her hips. "Are you done being dramatic?" she asked. "Because I want pancakes," Parker grinned. "Pancakes it is." Later that evening, the three of them sat on the balcony under a canopy of string lights Parker had apparently installed while Willow was gone. Greta twirled in a blanket, eating strawberries dipped in chocolate. Parker poured Willow a glass of wine and handed it to her without a word. They didn't talk about the past. There was no need. Willow leaned against his shoulder as the sun dipped low behind the skyline. She belonged here, not because she'd been hired, not because Greta needed her, but because she changed the rules the day she walked in, and Parker never wanted to go back. He had built his life like a fortress. But she had walked in with nothing but a canvas tote and a quiet laugh, and somehow she'd become the heart of it all. And this time, she wasn't going anywhere. The first thing Willow noticed about the Hamptons estate was the quiet. Not the kind of silence that felt empty, but the kind that hummed with ocean air, rustling trees, and the occasional cry of gulls overhead. It was all soft, whitewashed walls, wraparound porches, and the scent of linen and salt water. A world away from the towering skyline and polished penthouse floors of Manhattan. Greta had fallen asleep in the car on the drive out, her head resting in Willow's lap as Parker drove, one hand on the wheel, the other occasionally reaching over to brush Willow's knee. The moment had felt still, anchored. Like a promise of something steadier than either of them had allowed themselves to hope for before. Now, 2 days into their stay at the beach house, Willow stood barefoot in the kitchen, slicing oranges while the windows rattled gently in the sea breeze. Parker entered with a rolled-up newspaper under one arm, barefoot, wearing a white t-shirt she hadn't seen before. His hair was tousled from the wind. "She's still asleep," he said, setting the paper down and wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. "That child could sleep through a hurricane. She stayed up late trying to teach me the names of every prehistoric sea creature," Willow said, laughing softly. "I failed. She told me you passed. Said you remembered the Leoplerodon. That's because it sounds like a spell from Harry Potter." He kissed the curve of her neck. "I like you here. You like me anywhere I'm not trying to convince you to eat vegetables." He turned her gently to face him, brushing a piece of hair from her forehead. "That's probably true, but this," he glanced out the window at the gentle dunes and pale sky, "feels like something new. Like we're not just spinning plates anymore." She sobered slightly. "Are we done spinning?" "I am if you are." Her heart beat a little faster. "I want to be, I just don't want to lose myself in all this." "I don't want that either," he said. "That's why I did something." "A surprise." Her brows lifted. "What kind of surprise?" He took her hand and led her out the back doors, through the sand-worn path lined with tall grass, toward a small guest house she hadn't entered yet. He opened the door, stepped aside, and let her go in first. Inside, the space was flooded with light. A long wooden table stretched across the center, already scattered with blank canvases, sketchbooks, and a set of unopened oil paints. A tall bookshelf stood in the corner, filled with art books, and a vintage record player sat beside the window. "I remembered you said you hadn't painted in a while," he said quietly. "That you used to, before life got in the way." She turned slowly, eyes wide. "You made me a studio. You said you didn't want to disappear into my world. So I made space for yours." She stared at him, something catching in her throat. "This is more than thoughtful. I want you to create again. For you, not for Greta's science projects, not for me just because it's yours." She crossed the room and threw her arms around him, holding him tightly. "You're going to ruin me, you know." He held her just as tightly. "Then let's ruin each other." That afternoon, they painted together. Parker proved impressively terrible at it, which made Willow laugh until her stomach hurt. Greta joined them after lunch, painting an oddly shaped jellyfish that she insisted was a self-portrait. They left their canvases drying in the sun and walked barefoot along the beach as the tide came in, Parker lifting Greta onto his shoulders while Willow kicked at the foamy edge of the waves. That night, after Greta was asleep, Willow wandered out onto the back deck, the stars bright above them, the ocean a quiet hush in the distance. Parker joined her, a blanket draped around both their shoulders. "I talked to my partners today," he said. "Told them I'm stepping back from 2 of our projects." She turned to him. "You did?" "I want to be home more. I want to take Greta to school, and I want late mornings with you. I've built enough. It's time I start living." Willow reached for his hand. "I thought I was the dreamer here." "You are, I'm just catching up." He pulled a small box from his pocket, not a ring, something flatter, longer. He handed it to her without ceremony. Inside was a silver key, not engraved, simple, quiet. "To the penthouse," he said. "To the studio. To everything." She looked up at him, lips parting. "I'm not asking for an answer now. I just want you to know the door's open. You belong in this life, Willow, not because of Greta, not because I need a partner, but because you're the one I want to share it with." She stepped into him, pressing her forehead to his. "Then I think it's time I stopped pretending this is temporary." He kissed her then, a kiss that wasn't cautious or new. It was full, certain, the kind of kiss that didn't ask questions. It answered all of them. They spent the rest of the week in that rhythm: art, laughter, ocean walks, cooking meals they burned more often than not. Greta declared it the best vacation of her life after convincing Parker to build a blanket fort that took over the entire living room. On their last evening, Willow sat in the studio alone, painting the field behind the house as it glowed in the gold of early evening. Parker entered quietly, watching her from the doorway. "Would you ever think about doing a show?" he asked. She glanced back. "A show," he nodded. "There's a gallery in Tribeca I know. They'd love your work," she smiled. "Maybe, someday. For now, I'm just happy painting in bare feet with sand in my hair." He came closer, crouched beside her. "I like you like this." She dipped her paintbrush in a swirl of color. "Good. Because I think this is who I've always been under the noise." He kissed her temple. "Then let's build a life around her." They returned to the city the next day, but everything felt different, lighter, fuller. Willow moved into the penthouse officially. Greta insisted on helping her unpack, insisting all her shoes had to live in the same closet as hers, so they'd be friends. Parker cleared space in his home office for Willow's sketchbooks. They started hosting Friday night dinners, just the 3 of them, sometimes with music, sometimes with silence, always with dessert. One Friday evening in late summer, Parker stood beside Willow on the roof, the city stretching around them in shimmering gold. "I bought a place in Montauk," he said quietly. "Just closed today." She blinked. "Another house," he turned to her then, eyes steady. "No, a home for all of us with space, light, and a garden Greta can destroy." She leaned into him, her voice soft. "You're not scared anymore." "I am," he said. "But not of this." She tilted her head. "Of what then?" "Of how much I love you." She breathed it in before answering. "Then you're not alone." They didn't need a wedding that year. They didn't need a ring just yet. They had the kind of love that didn't rush, that unfolded, that built itself out of real things: trust, truth, and the quiet moments in between. And for the first time, Parker Jenson didn't need to own the world, because he'd already found his.